All right, so it is telling us that we're live, and I don't see, oh, and actually a comment came in right then, so that's awesome. Brian, if you want to introduce yourself at first, and then I can, and then we'll get started on the questions.
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm an engineer. I have OCD, ADHD, the whole anxiety, depression, the quadrilogy of good stuff going on. I'm here with my partner in crime, Mollie. We did this last Monday, and we did one about a month or so ago. She was my peer advisor when I started with an OCD back in end of February, early March. And we're basically here to try to answer as many questions as we can or give insights for stuff we've lived through or are currently dealing with, because we're both still in the maintain, I guess, phase, as you'll call it, if there is a phase. And we're not doctors, and nor do we pretend to be or have played on TV. So we can give you our advice or our thoughts, but we are not Dr. McGrath or anyone else who's got a PhD of any sort. So I see some questions coming in. So Mollie, my peer advisor, over to you.
Sure, yeah. So I am Mollie, like Brian said, and I do work for OCD as a peer advisor. So if you have any specific questions about the therapy process, about ERP, I would be more than happy to answer them. Like Brian said, though, we are not clinicians, we are not therapists, we are just people that live with OCD and know what it's like to have OCD and to have anxiety and all of the above. So we are so happy to be here and to answer your questions. So I will pull up some, you're related to an Albanese. That's exciting. So Anna asked, these days I am getting so easily angry, annoyed, etc. I'm sometimes even rude to my loved ones. What's wrong with me? So I would first of all say there is nothing wrong with you. It sounds like you are a human and you are experiencing some intense or some heavy emotions that you're not sure how to handle them. Brian, what do you think?
I will say this is one of mine all the time, because from my ADHD part is the motion regulation is rough, to say the least, and I'll tend to fly off the handle quick, even though I don't mean to. There's no filter before you'll go from calm to snappy in an instant. You don't mean to. It's just that filter isn't really there. And there's nothing, like Mollie was saying, there's nothing wrong with you. You're a person. If you didn't have emotions, you'd be a robot. Or you're a robot with emotions, in which case, congratulations on being an upgrade. But no, there's nothing wrong with you. It's you're gonna sometimes get it. Maybe it's just a phase, something happening in your life, like anxiety or something will hit you, and you tend to get triggered more readily. Or if you're just annoyed by something in the background, it's like a pressure cooker. Eventually that pressure builds up, and then the lid pops off, and it's not good for anyone. So it could just be something happening around you, something you're dealing with, and it's the main thing is try to find out what the source is, and then you can maybe attack it. But there's nothing wrong with you. That just happens. And for my ADHD, yeah, that happens a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. So somebody's asked about, I don't know if you feel comfortable answering that, or if you, I guess just
I feel comfortable answering anything.
Well, I think it is important to kind of reiterate that this is just your experience.
Yes.
It's not, we're not professionals or experts by any means. But Brian, I'll let you take that one.
So yeah, there is a much higher amount of comorbidity between OCD and something else. Anxiety, depression, the same way. They kind of all feed each other. I don't know if it's necessarily linked, but I definitely have both. And I've seen others that I know have both. And if you do have both, then sorry, because I know what it's like, because it's the intrusive thoughts, and then you get more of them. In addition to not being able to focus to begin with, it makes it harder to sort through everything. I mean, just struggling to do things normally, you have to work harder at it with OCD or with ADHD, and you put them together, and it's extra fun. So I don't think it necessarily linked from it, but I think if you have OCD, you're more likely to have something else with it. And it may be the same way with ADHD and something else, but I know it goes that way from OCD to something else. You're more apt to have something else with it. But I don't know if there's a direct cause. Dr. McGrath may know something about it, but I think it's more, if you have one, you're more apt to have another one with it.
And I think a lot of the symptoms can kind of overlap. I know a lot of my symptoms with OCD, I don't have ADHD, but sometimes that inability to focus, the needing to kind of, move from one thing to the other can be OCD, is OCD, but it also can be similar to some symptoms of ADHD from what I've kind of read up on it.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's a lot that are very similar between the two of them. Sometimes you might get misdiagnosed or they miss it because they think it's just symptoms of something else. And sometimes or symptoms of still OCD rather, or it's still ADHD, but sometimes you got both.
Yeah. So Luis asked, I have been wearing the same sweater for weeks and can't wash it or else something bad will happen. Any advice? So the first thing I would say, Luis, which is not what you want to hear, but it's probably what Brian would say too, is washing it. I mean, that is kind of the goal, is to intentionally cause those things that bring on your anxiety. And it sounds like washing your sweater will bring on that anxiety. Again, this is something a therapist would work with you to gradually work towards, but learning to sit with that uncomfortable feelings, with the dread, with the disgust, whatever feelings come along with those, the intrusive thoughts that come to you when you do these things that will cause your anxiety, is really the goal in ERP treatment. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's really right. I was going to say the same thing about wash the sweater. Because something bad could happen whether or not you wash the sweater. I mean, that's the fact. Unless you're worried about like the sweater running colors onto something else, then that may happen if you wash the sweater. But kidding. But you can, I would say, wash it, take that step, and see. That's the best ERP, because you have something that is the direct cause. It's linked to that sweater, and then it's like we always say, just live with the uncertainty of maybe something will happen. Maybe it won't, but it may be hard to do when you wash it the first time. But then when nothing happens, or hopefully nothing happens, then you'll feel a little bit better going, okay, well, maybe next time you can wash it, a few days later. And believe me, I know I'm all about rocking the same hoodie over and over again until I was like, yeah, I really need to wash this. So I get it, but it's just wash it and just see what happens, and you're going to feel uncomfortable. That's going to happen. But when you get the sweater, wash and dry, it's going to be a nice fresh sweater. It's going to be so fresh and so clean. So there is a positive upside for it. And then you get to wear it again for more times.
Mm-hmm. And I would add to that the goal of washing the sweater is not necessarily to prove that something bad hasn't happened, because that's not the goal. So the goal more is to wash the sweater and be able to handle if the bad things do happen. So I know a lot of times with ERP, when people are starting out with therapy, they want to kind of prove that this bad thing didn't happen, won't happen, that they, prevented harm in some way. And that's not really the goal. We're not magical. We're not that powerful, but washing the sweater, and if something does happen, you, Luis, will be able to handle it. And that really is the goal, is to learn how to kind of handle these things if and when they do happen. Regardless of the sweater, they might happen, they might not happen. And that is part of living. Unfortunately, that is, something we all deal with, is that something bad can happen anyway. But at least, like Brian said, at least you'll have a clean sweater.
Yeah. But like you said, it's not, if you start doing it to prove to yourself that nothing bad will happen, then you can latch onto that. And that can be your new compulsion, is to watch it, to keep washing it too much to make sure nothing bad happens. Like you said, the main thing is either something will or not happen, and just deal with that uncertainty that like, I don't know for sure what's going to happen. And that's the main thing for washing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. Just a very basic advice for someone just diagnosed with OCD. What do you wish you would have known?
The big one I'll say is that, no, you're not alone in this. Yes. I saw this one too. I was hoping you'd pick this one. Yeah, you're not alone. That's something I wish when I was a kid, because there wasn't a name for it. Like, we never talked about any mental health stuff. It was just taboo. You just didn't do it. And we all saw it happening to family members. And we just, I had that feeling that, I'm just odd or different. And, my line of work, everyone is pretty much odd and different, but just a little more so. But that's what I just thought, there was something wrong with me and there's nothing I could do about it. So getting made fun of and, getting picked for all the stuff I did, or even by people like in my family. Like I said, I've had loved ones that would like incessantly bug me about stuff I was doing because they just didn't understand. They just didn't know. Because they didn't have to deal with it. And I just thought there was something wrong with me. And I wish I had known that there was resources out there. That was one of the main reasons in doing this, because I wish I had known there was like the NoCD app, or, go into these Q&As, webinars, or any of the videos, really. I mean, just a resource out there to not only find out and seek help for those who want it, which I encourage everyone to. It's find out more about it, whether it's for you or for someone you care about, because it's a struggle and something that doesn't go away. You may be able to go like there's ebbs and flows. Some days is worse than others. Some things trigger it worse than others. It's going to happen. Some days some ones pop up that you're like, I haven't done that compulsion in a very long time. I didn't think about it, but for now it's the first thing on your mind. You have to play whack-a-mole, knock that one down, another one pops up. So it's, I think that's our first analogy of the night. But I just wish I had known that there was resources out there, free resources, and you could get help and it was readily available. That's something I waited way too long because I just was ignorant and didn't know about it. And that was something as a kid I could have used, that help, that, hey, you're not alone and this is a real thing. And it's not just you having an issue. Your brain is just different. I mean, that's just the way it is. But over to you, Mollie.
Is that my computer? Oh. Do you hear anything on your end?
Nope.
Okay, it must just be my computer. I hope
I mean, I can make a noise if you want me to.
No, I don't know what that is. I thought it was something on your end. Okay, I hope you guys can hear that. Let me know if you can. It's like some weird echo. Okay, I'm going to ignore it. Yes, those are all really great things that I wish I had known as well. I think the biggest one just being, that I wish I knew that I wasn't alone, because I as well spent the first probably 20 years of my life thinking that I was the only person like this. And sometimes I love being quirky and weird, but that's not, that's not who I am always. And I wish that I had known that at the time. And that, I guess that what I wish I had known as well is that ERP therapy is effective, that there is a treatment, there is a, scientifically data-backed, tried and true therapy process that works. And it is hard and it's scary, but it is doable, it is manageable. And living with OCD untreated is a lot more scary and a lot more overwhelming than ERP treatment ever is or could be. So I would say find your community, find people who are able to listen to you, whether they have OCD or they just have empathy and they can be a listening ear. To connect with others is huge, and it's really, really important when things get really hard.
Yeah, and I would definitely say the one thing to keep in mind is if you're doubting, if you have it, like, remember, it's a doubting disease. So you're gonna doubt up until even when you make the call, you're gonna doubt, maybe I don't have it as much as someone else, or maybe I don't deserve the help, or I'm taking help away. I know I did, and I was like, God, I don't even know how many times I tried to make the call before I actually did. I must have dialed and hung up, and I was just finally, it was like, just call. And especially like the first initial call even was just just find out and get the consult. I mean, just reach out to anyone, but you're going to doubt that you have it. That's one of the big things is you will doubt everything. And the ERP 100% definitely works. It's been a lot better. And I've got a lot more of my day back. And yeah, I still doubt. The doubting is still there, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I say this all the time, but I literally have a career in working with people with OCD, and I, to this day, doubt it often. That is the nature of the beast. That is, exactly what it wants you to do, for lack of better words, is doubt that you have it. And that is, that's something that we have to deal with, that maybe we don't. And I know that's really, really hard to accept, is that uncertainty around the disorder in itself. This is a really good question. I have a hard time opening up, being vulnerable and trustworthy to my girlfriend. My ROCD, so relationship OCD, gets the best of me. What exercises you work on in your inner self to open up? What do you think?
Well, I will say, yeah, well, that's hard for anyone to open up and be vulnerable. You're not alone, even with or without ROCD. That's not easy. The hardest thing being honest, be open and honest with your girlfriend. The ROCD will pop up every once in a while. Like that's one subtype I've had, and it's weird because I've had it in varying degrees in the past. But sometimes it rears its ugly head, whether it's just doubting me and that I'm not good enough, or you start doubting like little things that it's like, just let it. It's one of those things that you have to, again, live with the uncertainty of. It sounds mean to say it, but you have to go, okay, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, to anything that may pop up, which it sucks because it sounds like you're not respecting yourself or your partner, but that's not what it is. It's the fact that there's always going to be a little bit of uncertainty no matter what. There's never 100% anything, which OCD wants. But I will say, just try little things to try to open up. Take, baby steps, for lack of a better way to say it, is it's hard, especially if you've been hurt in the past and you have ROCD, which may have spawned it or made it worse. It is really hard. I mean, that was one of the things I had for the longest time is I remember as a kid, I would push everyone away on purpose. That's why I had the big mop top grunge hair back in the day, which is hard to believe. But it was like a wall to keep people back. I had the hair always down because I didn't want anyone to talk to me. And it's because I didn't want friends or, let alone anyone that was like any sort of interest more than friends. But it's take the little steps, and it may not be something that it may be like the littlest thing to open up about. Like I'd say the biggest thing is to open up if they don't know you have it. One of the freeing things is to let them know, because then they can look into it and research and understand. And that some people, it may be a bridge too far. It may be hard for them if they don't, but it's one of those things you can't just not bring that. It's going to come up at some point, and that once you get that out of the way, then they understand why you may be hesitant, or they may show more compassion, not reassurance, but it's that they will understand why you have done what you have and maybe give you more slack or try to encourage you. Like, it's okay. You don't have to tell me that. And in the same way, they won't force you to be definitive one way or the other, which is what your OCD wants. But I would say take maybe just little things you could try to open up, but even just start the conversation about even just talking about what ROCD is. And if you have any other OCD or any other issues, just start maybe opening with those and just start taking steps to build up to it. But I think that's a big one to, once you get that, the elephant in the room out of the way of, I have this, listen, this is going to happen. I'm trying, it's difficult. That understanding, I think once you'll tell that they understand, that'll be a lot more freeing for you. And I think that'll help you to start opening up a little more, and you have to cut yourself slack. Like, you don't have to open up right away and say like, hey, I'm afraid of heights, or I'm afraid of the color purple, something like that. Like, you like, I'm afraid that you might leave me for like a celebrity who's driving a Ferrari or something. Like you don't have to come up with big things. You might say like, hey, I don't, when you like make fun of me that way or say a joke, like I don't really like that. Like something like simpler, I don't want to go out to eat. I don't want to get pizza tonight. I want to do this instead. Just little things that you can build up towards it. But I think if you can open up to them about ROCD, as hard as it is, I think that'll help you a lot, because then they're not going to judge you. If they really care about you, they're going to support you and understand. So I guess that's over to you, Molly.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense for sure. I think as well, I know for myself, it is really hard when you're in that dark place. It's hard to be open, and it's hard to be vulnerable when things are going badly. When you're really struggling, it's hard to open up. I have found that when things are going well, you don't, really want to put a damper on a really good day, but I think that sometimes makes it a little bit easier. So I know for myself, when I'm having a good day, when I'm, my symptoms are not that overwhelming, that makes it sometimes a little bit more manageable to open up about, hey, you remember the other day when I, said this or I did this, it was because of my OCD. Because when you're in the moment, a lot of times it is really hard to talk about it. And sometimes you can kind of be a little bit more reflective when you're not, deep in it, if that makes sense. And like Brian said, open up as easy, as slowly as you want and are comfortable with. I know something I have done as well is journaling. I think that helps just kind of get your thoughts out, get your words out onto paper. And I honestly have sometimes shown my partner my, papers or things that I have written, because it's a little bit easier than having to say them out loud sometimes. So that might be one suggestion as well, is to, start, like you said, start slow and take it as slowly as you need to.
Yeah, and definitely don't beat yourself up over it or give yourself a hard time. It's going to be difficult, and any progress you make is still progress. So just take the little small victories as you get them. Like just, be proud of yourself, and don't beat yourself down, because again, OCD bully, that's what it does.
Oh yes, absolutely. Sometimes when I click, this happens every time when I click on the button, it like scrolls all the way down. So then I have to scroll back up. Like I don't know if it's me or not.
No, it's not just you.
All right. I'm trying to see. Okay, so somebody has asked about their themes changing a bit. I feel like my OCD thoughts have changed theme. I was working with sitting with one and did some ERP. Now new ones have popped up. Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
That's the whole whack-a-mole, or the
exactly.
Stick your finger in the dam where the water's coming out and sprays up somewhere else. That's what it does.
Yeah.
Find the way out.
Absolutely. That is part of the process, is recognizing. I think that's a really big step in recovery, is recognizing that is going to happen. And that, you can kind of use that as an exposure, is allowing yourself to not know what's next. Tomorrow you might wake up with a completely different theme, and the one you're struggling with right now could be gone. And that could happen, or you could be stuck with this one for the rest of your life. It really is not something that we get to choose. I think again, being aware that could happen is a good step.
Yeah, some themes may pop up that you never had. Some may go away, come back. It's you never know what this season of OCD will bring. Absolutely.
Yep. It is, and I think it is also pretty common for that to happen. For it to jump around. All right. So Larissa asked, any advice with the thoughts or feelings feeling really true, even if you don't want them to be?
Well, I mean, if they didn't feel true, then they wouldn't bug you. And then you wouldn't be writing about it. It's one of those things you have to say, so what if they're real or not? I mean, just like I've said before, when you get the intrusive thoughts in, just let them go in and out the other side. I mean, if you focus on them too much or ruminate on them, then they'll start happening more, or you just intensify them. Really, it's kind of like, intensifying a flame. You're starting a fire, and the fact that you're recognizing then you don't want them to be is kind of feeding them, because you're trying to push back on them, so you're thinking about them more, and then you start ruminating on them, like, no, they can't be true. And you start trying to reassure yourself that no, they're not true. I don't feel that way. I don't want that, and it's just going to make it worse. Whereas and like I said, it sounds like the biggest cop out, but when you can just have to say, so what if they're real? What if they're not? I mean, they're just a thought. Let them pass, which is easier said than done. But when you focus on them, they tend not to go. It's like, when you're driving or riding a bike or something and you look at a tree, if you keep staring at it, you'll find yourself start steering towards it. And you don't even think about it. That just happens. So it's kind of like that. If you don't pay attention to the tree on the side of the road, you won't focus on it and start heading towards it.
I like that analogy. Yeah. Yeah. You said it very well.
Good analogy. Yeah, good one. Add that in our repertoire. Greatest hits album.
Can you provide tips on managing avoidance OCD and reducing avoidance as a compulsion, please? I guess it would depend on what you are avoiding. But the biggest tip would be to stop avoiding. I know that's very, a kind of a simple answer, but honestly, that is what the exposure would be to face it head on. As I also have social anxiety. And so going out in public, being around other people brings on so much anxiety that I sometimes just can't handle it. And the best way to get through it is to go around and go out and be around other people. It's scary, it's hard, it doesn't always get easier throughout the day, but it is really the only way through it is through it. I don't know, I can't think of another tip really.
That is exactly what I will double down on that. It's if you're avoiding going somewhere, be it a store, going outside, you have to just do it. I mean, that is the main ERP. I mean, incoming analogy, I'll say it's like when I first learned to drive with a clutch. I got a new vehicle on purpose. I was like, I want to get one with a clutch, and I found the biggest hills I dreaded, starting out on a hill. I found by me up in good old cold country where there's plenty of hills and mountains. I found the tallest one, and I purposely would stop at every one until I got better at it. And yeah, that clutch was not happy with me, but you get better. And that's eventually it's like second nature. You don't even think about it. And it's one of those things. Yeah. And I will still stall every once in a while and things that happens, but it's just like that. You may stumble with a compulsion every once in a while. It's gonna still happen. But it's one of those things you have to, when something specifically, like I don't want to go this place or I don't want to go here, and something that you specifically can point to is like, this is causing the anxiety for me, and you gotta force yourself to do it. Like just do it, and just whatever happens. But the first time is going to be rough, and eventually you'll start getting less rough, and then it may get to the point that it doesn't bother you much at all. And some days maybe it will more. You'll go to walk out the door and go, nope, and turn around and head back inside. And that's fine. That's okay. That's going to happen. But it's the fact that the first time you do it is the biggest step forward you're going to get. And it'll get a little better, and you'll get that sense of relief of doing it just the first time, even as uncomfortable as it is. when you're done and realize, hey, I actually did that, you'll feel great for a little bit. And the more it happens, it's that feeling like, hey, I'm taking back going to where I wanted to go. Maybe it's a place you used to like going or a place you always wanted to go. Now you actually did it. So I would say, yeah, that's the big thing, is you're gonna have to just do it. And just whatever happens. Like you something good, something bad, who knows? It could be the best thing ever that happens to you when you get there. But if you don't go, you're not going to know. So I'd say go and just do it. That's the best tip I can say.
Yeah. And I think, like you said about driving a stick shift, it's, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's not to be perfect at it. It's not to, never mess up and never make mistakes. It's like any other skill. Getting, ERP is a skill like anything else. And the more you do it, the more comfortable with it you get. And it's, it becomes part of, becomes second nature sometimes, to go do the things that are scary. Yep. Ice baths. That is interesting. Are ice baths good for OCD recovery? I've been taking them every morning and been feeling better. Wondering if you all know anything about this. Interesting. So I don't.
First of all, I give props to the Dragon Ball Z there. The Dragon Ball Z symbol. That's the first thing that popped out. But I don't know if they're good for recovery. I mean, it's one of those things, if that makes you if that's kind of like a relaxing warm bath, some people may prefer a cold bath. I mean, it's if it's something you like, it's like, I like coffee, so I'm going to drink coffee to relax. I don't know if I'd say relax, but either way, it's one of those things. If it's something you do because it's like you feel like you have to in order to feel better, but it sounds like you're just doing it as kind of like a treat yourself type thing. If you feel better, then go for it. I mean, I don't think there's any harm. You're not hurting yourself if you go because it makes you relax, and maybe it's just helping with your anxiety or that moment of zen you have with it, or just go with it. Like mine's usually like getting in my car and driving, just listening to the engine, windows down. Like I love that. That'll help me relax, or playing Call of Duty Zombies with my girlfriend. That's another thing. That's my treat yourself. But it's if you like them, I don't see anything wrong with that. If you're not hurting yourself and not causing any pain, so what? Enjoy.
I have heard the comparison of like taking an ice bath to building up tolerance for discomfort. So in terms of that, I have heard like alongside therapy can be beneficial to with a polar bear club where you jump into an ice cold lake first thing in the morning. More power to you. I think that sounds terrible. If it works, go for it. But yeah, I have heard that it helps you recognize that you can live with things that are uncomfortable, such as being in ice. So I don't know if I don't think there's any necessarily science behind that, but I have heard that it can be a helpful tool to kind of remind yourself like, hey, I can actually handle these things that don't feel good, which is an exposure, is allowing yourself to feel those things that are uncomfortable. So yeah, go for it. Can OCD be seasonal?
I mean, I was gonna say like allergies. Like I mean, I guess it could depend on I would say you're always gonna have it, but I think it might flare up more depending on what you're doing those seasons. Like if it flares up more if you're at school, then I could see that, or it's a certain part of your year, your move, if you live between two different places or something. If there's like one, you don't like being crowded in city or something, or vice versa, you don't like rural and you get stuck there half a year. I think it could depend on environment and what you're experiencing. Maybe like if there's some anxiety behind it, then I think it could flare up more. You just don't notice it as much. But I'd say there's probably symptoms all year of you having it. If you do have it, it doesn't just magically go away. That would be nice. If I would like it if mine went away, and snow, I get snow and all of a sudden I don't have OCD anymore. That'd be awesome. I can request that, Molly. I would like to. But
yeah, I think it can get worse in different, like you said, in different parts. I think it's more dependent on what transitions you're going through. So that might be something that happens in certain seasons, but I don't think it's necessarily because of the seasons. I do know, some people do deal with seasonal affective disorder where things do get worse in certain months. Their depression, their anxieties, levels are higher. And so that can feed off of the OCD and vice versa. So that could be something for sure. Yes, definitely. Is it possible for an OCD obsession to go away for some time and then recur after a number of years? Yep. That is absolutely something that can happen.
No, I can attest to some of those ones that I haven't had in years. From whack-a-mole have popped up, or I've just noticed ones that I hadn't thought about for whatever reason, that the compulsions weren't there and then magically they're back again. I was like, I haven't done that in years. Like I can't really link some of them to why they came back, but some of them it's just, certain occurrences in your life may trigger something that you hadn't thought about along with changing jobs or new relationship or something. Your obsessions may come back. It's just part of the fun of the game of OCD.
Absolutely. It always likes to keep you on your toes.
Yep. It's good at that.
Yeah. This is something I was on a family trip over the summer, and something kind of just hit me out of the blue that I hadn't thought of in months. And it was, it was OCD related. It was just an obsession I can now recognize as that. But at the time, it's scary and it's new, but it's also familiar. So yes, absolutely, that can happen. Some tips for harm OCD. So I would say, kind of like we were saying earlier, my advice would be to stop avoiding, which I think is something that a lot of people with harm OCD do, is they'll avoid knives or cooking or sharp edges or scissors, things that we use on a regular basis. So if that is recognizing that as a compulsion, I think is always a really good first step, is kind of figuring out what your compulsion is. It sounds like reassurance seeking is your compulsion. So stop asking for reassurance. That's so much easier said than done. Do you have any other tips?
Well, like you were saying, it's like most things, it's similar with any type of OCD. It's the ERP and the exposure of, like you're saying, if it's the harm OCD with knives, you just go in the room with the knives, go in the kitchen, and you feel uncomfortable, but try to sit with that and, go through the anxiety for how many minutes at a time. Write down, the anxiety level, like the typical things you can do just to see, and it'll get better over time. Like you said, the reassurance seeking is one. Because it's that temporary fix of making you feel better, like, oh, I'm a good person, right? I would never do that, right? And but it becomes never enough. And it's just like doing a compulsion. It's like kind of a different flavor of compulsion, where you're going to want it to feel better temporarily, but in the end, you're going to need more and more and more, and there's never enough. So I understand you're definitely going to have trouble. Anyone has trouble with the reassurance seeking, and a lot of times you don't even realize you're doing it until someone points it out. Like if you ask the same question again, like, well, I would never do that. And they're like, well, stop. You have to tell them too. Sometimes that's the hardest part, is telling them, like, don't do that to me. Don't answer me, or don't give me the right answer. Like, just don't give into it. No matter what I say, just don't give into it. So they're like always ERP, and the reassurance, don't give in, and don't have someone feed you and enable you with the reassurance back to you. And that's probably the best advice we can give.
Yeah, and that includes Google, because I know that is definitely something that I've done.
Yes.
Is it normal to fill in the blank with anything. And Google, you can fall down that rabbit hole for hours and not actually get anywhere. And that's the hardest part, is you're not helping yourself. It's really self-sabotage, in some ways, but it's so hard when you're in it, of course. I like how you said, kind of start slow. Don't, expose yourself to things that are 10 out of 10 on an anxiety level.
Yes.
Start really slow, set a timer for 2 minutes, do something for 2 minutes, be in the same room as, the person that your harm OCD might be centered around, and kind of build it up from there. It's hard and it's scary when it is so, again, when it feels so real. I know harm OCD thoughts can be sometimes the scariest because they are violent and they're not pleasant. So have some patience with yourself as well.
Yeah, remember, they're just thoughts. They're not, you didn't request those thoughts. That doesn't mean anything to you. They're just thoughts. Yep.
Absolutely. Does OCD ever go away? Is there is there a certain brain scan where you can see on the scan that you have it? No, it does not ever go away. It is a chronic illness. That is the first answer to that, but it is manageable. It is something that you can live with, and live a fulfilling life. I think that's really important to say, is you can. I noticed somebody was asking about holding a job. You can have a job, you can have a family, you can have children, you can have a house, you can, have white picket fence, all the things that you want in your life. Even with OCD, it just comes along for the ride.
Yeah. It's like Mollie was saying, it's a lot easier once you actually start to do ERP or start to recover. It makes it easier to go about your life, but it doesn't. You can have normal. I have no issues. I go to work every day. Have my kids and my girlfriend. There's going to be challenges more than a normal person, but it's not like it's going to hold you down. So, and now, granted, some people have varying degrees, and where you are in recovery or not make a difference. But you can go about your life normally. It may hold you back at first, but it's taking a step to try to not how thinking of it, but to adapt to it. I guess maybe, I don't know if you're trying to. You control it as well as you can, but it's more mitigate the effects of the impact on your life. You can lessen the effects to the impact on your life, so it's not as bad as it originally was, and it may be to the point that people don't even notice, or you don't even notice because you've gotten so good at it. Like, if you won't check 8 million times to do something, and they're like, someone who looks a lot like me used to. And I think the main thing to do is where it seems you gotta laugh about it. You just make joke about the stuff you do, or because a lot of the times, a lot of things you have, you may think this is ludicrous. Why on earth am I doing this? It's because your brain wants you to do it. You didn't ask for those thoughts. You didn't ask for those compulsions. It's just a thing, but manage them. And once you do that, it makes it a lot easier once you actually start attacking it and start trying to cope with it. And if you don't, and if you just ignore it, it'll get worse. And it'll make it a lot more difficult when you actually try to do it. It becomes second nature. You won't even at first you'll have to focus on trying to do it with the ERP. I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to try to last 5 minutes in this room, or baby steps. I'll go from this object in this room, or this person in this room, or I'll leave a light on somewhere for 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then an hour, then a day and a half, or whatever. And it gets to the point and you don't even give it a second thought, really, and it may come back and forth, but you can control it to the point that you can live your life. No one may even notice, or they might not even know you have it. And so don't think it'll hold you back. It only holds you back if you let it, or if you don't try to mitigate it or lessen the effects, then it'll have a lot more impact than if you actually try to do something about it, I guess is. I say, and just understand you're not perfect. No one's perfect. Don't beat yourself up over it. And just, as I try to do, you just laugh about it, because if I can't laugh about it, who else will?
Yep, absolutely. And then as far as the brain scan, so I have seen scans where somebody who has OCD's brain does look different than somebody else. But as far as I know, there isn't like a scan that you can, like a test that you can do to see if you have it. I don't know if that makes sense. I also don't know much about brain scans.
Yeah, no, I've seen similar things where they show like neurotypical or whatever the term is versus like ADHD or OCD and stuff, and they look different. But it's one of those things like, I don't know of any magic scan where they can just, you put your face in front of it and it says, yes, no, you have OCD. It's not like some sci-fi thing. At least as far as I know, there's nothing exists. If so, I'd like to see it in action because that would be
very cool.
It'd be very cool to watch.
Yes. Are there OCD subtypes that are harder to diagnose? I don't think so. They may be harder to recognize, but I think somebody who is trained in ERP or in, who understands OCD and is trained in how to effectively use ERP should be able to pick up on the symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the hardest things, not really subtype, is just like you were saying, how they manifest. If it's more internal in your head thinking, then that'd be harder to actually diagnose OCD in the first place because most of your thoughts are internal. It's not something people can see you physically doing. It's just in your head. You're just ruminating or thinking all the time about you're focusing on your thoughts. And so you're always in here and people may not notice except for the fact that, they're looking at you like, you haven't said anything in like 10 minutes. What are you thinking about? Like, unless it's something like that. But like you said, the main thing is someone who is trained in recognizing OCD and dealing with it, because that was the first issue I had. They weren't trained in it, so they didn't pick up on it. So they picked up on the anxiety, depression, that fun duo, but they couldn't get to the cause because they didn't recognize it. And even though all the symptoms were there, and they gave me a standardized ish test, they weren't one. They couldn't explain the questions again, like because I'd asked them like, I don't know what this means. Like, what does this question mean to me? And they weren't used to it, so they're not experienced in it, so they didn't pick up on it. But you talk to someone who's used to it, and they're like, oh yeah, no, that definitely. Because I'm telling them like, this is what I've done since a kid. I've used to check this stuff, and example, something silly would be like turn a light off, and I'm in the dark on a stairway, but I have to turn it back on and turn it back off again because I'm not sure I turned it off, even though I'm standing in the dark and can't see anything. Like that was a real thing, and you just tell someone that who's trained in OCD, and they're like, oh yeah, no, yeah, how many times did I check it? And they're like, oh, I know why you did it, and they might, and then just talking to them, they can tease out what subtypes might be there. And sometimes subtypes may come out later because they don't, like we were saying, they may not all come out at once. Like other subtypes I didn't even really think about until something would happen. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I forgot I used to do that. And I hadn't done it in years. And it was like, oh yeah, that did happen. Now that you mention it, I would do that. Or I would apologize a ton of times or check this over and over again. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I did that. So I think they will. You get someone who's trained, and you spend the time with them. They may not pick up on it within the first 10 minutes or something, but the more you talk to them and the more explain what's going on, they will eventually tease it out and you'll start recognizing it too. I think that's one of the most powerful things is when you're working with them and they teach you how to recognize, what is causing the compulsion and what's that linked to. And then you can say, oh yeah, no, you're right. That's where this is. And then you might pick up on, oh, well, I was doing this. And they'll say, well, is it because of X, Y, and Z? And then they'll say, well, you may have a part of this subtype. And you could be like us and collect them all like Pokemon. That's it. That's the thing. But I think they'll eventually come out, but it's more if you're more internal than external, that may be harder for the OCD in general to come out, but it's the people who are trained in it and are used to it. They've heard everything. So don't be afraid to tell them. That's the biggest thing. If you hold back and don't tell them the truth about what's going on in your head, internal and external, then they can't help you. So that would be, if you don't give them the info, then they can't properly diagnose you. So they've heard it all, trust me. And whatever you think would shock them or no one said before, someone has. And whatever thoughts you've had, someone's probably already had them. There's probably dozens, thousands of people who've had the same thought. And they just, like I said, if you go to vocalize it, whether it's in the chat here or on the OCD app or wherever, if you put it out, especially here or in the app, someone is going to say, I've had a similar thought. It's the same exact one. So no matter what, you're not alone with that. But trust your therapist. They've heard it all. They're not going to judge you. That's their job. They're used to it. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, no, I can relate. A lot of them can even relate. They're like, no, I've had that thought. Like, you have no idea what someone's been through or seen, and they have seen it all. And so you're not going to shock them. So give them the info they need to find out what subtypes you have. And I guess I kind of went off rambling, but
it was all very valuable. And I think it is important to recognize that OCD can latch on to anything. I know a lot of times people are very specific in wanting to kind of classify their OCD as this type or this theme. And that it can be helpful, obviously, to connect with others, to feel less alone, to, work on specific exposures. But at the end of the day, it is just OCD, and it's, just with a different hat, it is the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the thought process, the way that you get an obsession and you engage in something to make that anxiety less, and then it goes away for a little bit and then it comes back. Like, that is the OCD cycle, whether or not it is, latching on to this thing versus another thing. At the end of the day, it's all OCD. And like Brian said, an ERP specialist will be able to pick up on that and help you realize what is your OCD.
And just remember, ERP is, no matter what the subtype is, it's OCD, ERP. That's the biggest thing you can do to help it.
Yep, absolutely. So I always think in any of these lives, when someone says, am I the only one?
Nope.
The answer is going to be no. It's without giving you reassurance, it is always going to be no. Are there other people are there other people who have the form of OCD with a theme surrounding a fear of the predictive power of dreams? You are definitely not the only one. This used to be something I really struggled with as a kid. Quick story. One time I had a dream that one of my really good friends died in a skiing accident. And it was like this really graphic dream. And the next day I went into school, this was like third grade, maybe. The next day I went into school and she wasn't there. And I was so convinced that I had somehow gotten her killed. Like, what my dream made her have some type of accident and she was not, alive anymore because of me. Obviously that's impossible. Obviously I had nothing to do with it. She just had a headache or something. I don't even remember. She wasn't in school that day, came back the next day, no big deal. But from that moment on, I was always so afraid that my dreams somehow had power to them and that something that I dreamt could come true. And obviously that can't happen. Like we were just saying, OCD really can latch onto anything. So latching onto your dreams is, that can happen. That can be really scary. I know I've had some really weird dreams that are not anything that can really happen. And it's hard when you wake up and you're like trying to figure out what's real and what's not. If you have real OCD and or false memory, it can be really challenging. But no, you're definitely, long story short, you're not alone in that. And ERP is the way to handle those thoughts.
Yeah. And I mean, dreams are just, thoughts when you're sleeping. It's just random. You're going to have random thoughts, it's like intrusive thoughts are like your dreams while you're awake. They're just in and out. You don't control what's going to happen in your dreams. Trust me, I've tried, and it never works. It's usually some really warped version of what I wanted to go back to dreaming about. You can't control them. So you are not your dreams, and you're not your intrusive thoughts is the main thing.
Yeah. I think that's such a good way to describe it. A dream is just an intrusive thought. You're not in any control of it. You have no control over what your brain comes up with. Your brain is so creative, and can show you all kinds of things that make no sense. So
it's really good at it too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I'm not a very creative person but my brain is, and it comes up with things that make no sense all the time. Have you experienced periods of time where OCD is more or less dormant and intrusive thoughts and compulsions are cut by half or more than before, kind of like remission?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Like we were saying, it could be either when anxiety is low and there's no stressors around you, like stress and anxiety, a lack of sleep for me is another one. Like, will definitely spike them up. I can tell the difference. I hadn't until I was really sleep deprived. At one point, noticed how worse it was. And I was like, okay, I need to remember that that's bad. Like, that made them much, much worse. But it could depend on what's going on in your life, what's going on around you, the environment. But yeah, I mean, there's, like we were saying, there's ebbs and flows. I mean, your compulsions, your intrusive thoughts, they will go up and down, and sometimes there's no rhyme or reason, but sometimes it's the environment or what's going on in your life can definitely spike them up, or maybe push them down. If everything is like super perfect or anything, they could be at like a lull that you don't notice it, and then out of nowhere they get spiked back up again. It's just, you said, it's kind of the randomized fun that comes with OCD. So yeah, that I definitely experienced that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is part, like I said, part of the process is knowing that can happen. That, and I think what's really hard too is having expectations for when things are going to go well. And then they don't necessarily, because your OCD is really loud, or your symptoms are really bad that day. And that can be really hard when it's, a special event or something exciting that is happening in your life, a vacation, for example. But yeah, it definitely can be, they wax and wane the symptoms and the severity of them, I guess. How do you help a spouse or a family member understand? Is there information out there that teaches them what this is like?
I would say the teacher's almost like it's you. I mean, I hate to say it, you're the best resource. I mean, there's books out there. You can put them the websites and books and everything, but you're the biggest person to help them understand. I know I've had talks with, like, my nephew has ADHD. Is probably a little OCD, not much, but he's been diagnosed definitely with ADHD for a while. My brother hasn't been diagnosed, but he definitely has at least some OCD. He has the same symptoms I've had, which we've got, from my mom. I will definitely say that, but it's one of those things, we sat around and talked about it, and it's just like, my nephew was like asking questions like, does this go away, and will it, like, I remember him just like asking me like, well, when does it stop? And I was like, it doesn't. Like, it's just you managing. I mean, he's doing great with medication he's on now, and he's doing fantastic. And it's one of those things of, what it's like. And like, that's one of the things I like, is just trying to tell my friends, or even just talking to my girlfriend about it. Just, she was asking questions. I said, you can ask whatever you want. I'll be honest. Like, I'll tell you what it's like, just so you understand what's going on in my head, or to try to help you understand. And, it may be tough for people who don't, it's going to be tough for people who don't have it to relate. That's for sure. And it's ironic saying that, because it's like, I know there's a lot of people in my family that don't know that I have it, just because it's like, it was so pervasive of, we didn't talk about that kind of stuff. Now it's like, and it's hard for me to try to approach that with them, because they're going to say, well, I don't have that, or they'll take it as an offense. But it's like, my brother knows, my nephew knows, like, there's other family members that know. It's just, some of them it'd be hard for them to hear it. And that's, some people just may not understand, but it's just, you can tell them what it's like, because you're dealing with it. And that may put more burden on you, but it's like, you can get them books, and granted, there's good books out there. Like, Dr. McGrath's book I have my kids is like, if you want to, I leave it right there. It's like, you want to look up anything, my brain's different. You want to take a look, go ahead. Ask any questions. You can ask me whatever you want. Feel free, because that was one of the big things, is those resources, as far as I know, didn't exist when I was a kid, or at least they weren't any place readily available. I mean, you'd never hear about OCD other than, people washing their hands too much. That was all that people thought. No, that's all that people still think it is just when I tell them, they're like, oh, so you wash your hands a lot? I'm like, no, that some people do, but not, it's like, that's a subtype, but there's all of these different types out there. And yeah, they can look up stuff online. You can give them books, you can give them literature, but I think the best resource is someone who's dealt with it. And I would say you're the best resource because you have dealt with it, you're dealing with it, and we're fine. Like, it's just, if you have questions, let me know. And you tell them, like, this is, my brain is wired a little differently. It doesn't mean, that's just the way it is. Maybe like, it may make you more creative. It may, like, you process stuff differently than those around you. It's just a different way of being. It's like, it's a different t-shirt. Like, we don't all have the same t-shirts. And nor would you want to, but it's one of those things that it's just letting them know that it's okay. I'm okay. I'm like, there's no reason to treat me differently. You've known me. I've had this my entire life. Like, feel free to just be open and honest, which again is ironic me saying that to some people who don't know that I have that or the ADHD. But I'd say you're probably the best resource, and I'll leave it at that, I guess. And Mollie, with you.
Yeah, and there is information out there. The IOCDF, the International OCD Foundation, has some really good resources, some good articles. I know Brian and I are doing these lives. There are lives throughout the week that can sometimes be just a really helpful way to kind of approach the topic without having to share too much if you're not comfortable with that yet or at all. I know there are blog posts, there are articles, there are, things that exist that can make things a little bit more, a little bit easier to explain than having to kind of open up if that's something that you're not able to do just yet. But yeah, I do think that you are your best resource for explaining what you're going through. You know yourself best. So I would say that is a good place to start as well. And on that note, I do think that, I do know that it's past 9 o'clock.
When did that happen?
9 o'clock on East Coast, I should say. So this was great. As always, you guys never fail to have awesome, insightful, thoughtful questions, and I love it. I'm not sure who it will be tomorrow, but I do know that there are lives just like this throughout the rest of the week. So tune back in, same place, same time tomorrow. And I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to say anything to end us.
Yeah, no, I'd say thank you guys very much for tuning in. As always, like, we like it. We love going through the questions in any way we can help or just be a distraction for a couple minutes. So that's what we're here for. That was the whole reason. I know I wanted to do this, was just to try to give back, because I know what it's like and I never had anyone to talk to about this. So thanks for tuning in. Like I said, I'm not sure who's in tomorrow, but if you are struggling, seek help. Or there's nothing like the OCD call is free to talk to someone, and they'll tell you whether you have or maybe don't have symptoms. And an OCD app is free to go. Pose questions anytime that you want. And you want to see us on there, popping in. But yeah, just stay strong and don't beat yourselves up. And, it's a constant struggle, but, we can overcome this and, just enjoy your life and live. But you guys have a great one, and have a great week. And I guess September's almost over. I can't believe September's almost over.
Yeah.
Don't forget, it's Mental Health Month in October. As Mollie and I were trying to remember, we think it's the first week is OCD. I'm not exactly sure. You can blame me because I'm not
in October. I do know that. We'll have an update soon.
Yeah, we'll have an update. Stay tuned for the next one. We'll have updates.
And I want to add as well that we do have support groups for OCD. They are free. A lot of them are led by our therapists throughout the day, throughout the week. We have some on weekends. And if we were not able to get to your question that is because there were so many and they were all really good. But we are, I don't know about you, I guess I can't speak for Brian, but we are reading them throughout. I know I'm trying to catch up on all of them. So you are not alone in anything that you're experiencing, and we appreciate you being here with us.
Definitely.
And spending your Monday night with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like I said, the questions are what we're here for. So, thanks. It's great to, do whatever we can to try to help, or like I said, be a distraction for a little bit, because, we all need distractions these days. So take care, and thanks for everyone. All the kind words I see that are popping up on the side, and you'll definitely see us again. So have a great one.